The sound of heels echoed sharply against the marble floor, slicing through the silence of the grand lobby like a blade. Everyone froze. Assistants held their breath, security guards stiffened, and even the elevator seemed to hum more quietly. The woman walking through, tall, elegant, and cold as winter, was none other than Clara Voss, the most feared billionaire in the city. Her reputation wasn't just built on power or wealth, it was built on the trail of fear she left behind. In her world, kindness was weakness, emotions were liabilities, and people were disposable. But fate had a strange way of humbling the strongest. Because one ordinary man, a single father with nothing but courage, was about to change everything. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of change, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles right now before we go deeper into this unforgettable story. Clara Voss owned the towering glass building that scraped the skyline of Crestview City. Her company, Voss Dynamics, was a fortress of steel and silence. No one dared to make eye contact with her unless spoken to. She was the kind of woman who never smiled, who fired people for being 2 minutes late, who seemed untouched by the world's warmth. They called her the Ice Queen of Crestview. Behind her designer suits and calculated words, she hid something darker, an emptiness she refused to acknowledge. 5 years earlier, Clara had lost her parents in a car crash caused by a reckless drunk driver. Since that night, she had buried her heart beneath success, believing emotions would only destroy her. She built walls instead of bridges, empires instead of relationships. But no amount of wealth could fill the quiet of her penthouse at night, the echo of loneliness growing louder with every passing day. Everything changed on a bright Tuesday morning when she arrived at the construction site of her latest luxury housing project, Voss Heights. The project was behind schedule, and she had come to set things right. Workers scrambled to make everything perfect, knowing one mistake could cost them their jobs. But among the crowd stood one man who didn't flinch when she walked past. Ethan Cole, a 34-year-old single father who worked as a site supervisor. Ethan was different from the others. His clothes were simple, his hands rough from labor, but his eyes, steady, calm and kind, met hers without fear. His 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, often waited in a small folding chair nearby, drawing pictures while her dad worked. Ethan had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier and had been juggling fatherhood, debt, and long work hours ever since. Despite everything, he carried himself with quiet strength, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak without losing hope. When Clara spotted Sophie one day, sitting quietly under a shade with a lunchbox, she frowned. "Whose child is that? This isn't a playground," she said sharply. Ethan turned from the scaffolding and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "She's mine, ma'am. I couldn't find anyone to watch her today. She's just sitting quietly, not disturbing anyone." Clara's tone turned cutting. "This is a professional site, not a daycare. If I see her here again, you're fired." The words hung heavy in the air. Everyone around felt the chill of her voice, but Ethan didn't bow. He looked her straight in the eye and said calmly, "Understood, ma'am. But sometimes you have to make choices between your job and your child. I chose my child." Then he went back to work, leaving Clara speechless for the first time in years. Something about his words unsettled her. No one ever talked back to her. No one dared. But the way he said it wasn't rebellious. It was sincere. That night, as she sat alone in her high-rise apartment overlooking the city lights, Clara couldn't stop hearing his voice. "I chose my child." Those 4 words pierced through her armor like cracks in glass. Days passed, but Clara found herself noticing Ethan more often. How he treated the workers with respect, how he stayed late to help others, how he smiled whenever his daughter ran to hug him after work. His kindness wasn't loud or performative. It was quiet, constant, and real. One afternoon, Clara arrived unannounced again. Sophie was there, sitting with her little sketchbook, drawing what looked like the city skyline. When she saw Clara, she quickly hid her paper, nervous. But Clara knelt down, surprising everyone. "What are you drawing?" she asked softly. Sophie hesitated, then showed her a picture of the skyscraper with a tiny stick figure at the top, labeled Ms. Voss. "That's you," Sophie said innocently. "Daddy says you're the boss lady who builds castles in the sky." For the first time in years, Clara smiled. An unguarded, genuine smile. She couldn't remember the last time a child had spoken to her without fear. From that day, something subtle began to shift. She started visiting the site more often, asking questions, observing not just the numbers but the people. She even surprised Ethan by approving a new safety rest area for workers, a decision that stunned her entire management team. Still, Clara's transformation didn't happen overnight. There were moments she reverted to her old ways, snapping at staff, retreating behind her icy facade whenever she felt vulnerable. But Ethan's calmness grounded her. One afternoon, when a storm forced them to halt construction, Clara found herself sitting inside the temporary shelter with Ethan and Sophie. The rain drummed against the roof as Sophie offered her a cookie. Clara hesitated, then took it. For a moment she felt something she hadn't in years, belonging. Ethan looked at her quietly and said, "You know, Miss Voss, people don't hate you because you're tough. They just don't understand what you've been through." Clara's jaw tightened. "And what makes you think I've been through anything?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Because people who haven't been hurt don't build walls that high." She looked away, her throat tightening. No one had ever seen through her so clearly. Over the next few weeks, Clara started seeing life differently. She noticed the laughter of workers during lunch breaks, the small joys she'd long ignored. She began to care, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She even surprised Sophie one afternoon with a small art set, saying quietly, "Every castle needs a designer." Sophie's eyes lit up, and Ethan's quiet thank you carried more warmth than she knew how to handle. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles, because the world always needs more stories about compassion and courage. Special request, comment below. Do you believe even the coldest hearts can change when they're met with kindness? And as the sun set over Crestview, Clara Voss, once feared, now admired, walked beside Ethan and Sophie, no longer the woman above the world, but one among it, finally free.